Okay, welcome to episode 12. I'm starting to lost count. I think of New York City Bike Culture. I think we're 12. 10 is in the works. 11 is about to come out today. At 12, I'm excited because it's the first guest where I don't have to talk bike racing, which is great. So I'm sitting with Albetski, who's an urban planner, who is a bike blogger, I would say, bike ride blogger, rides bikes, obviously. She is from Connecticut originally, but now in the New York City area. Has lived here for 7 years, she told me. She's a CUNY grad, which I'm excited about because I work at CUNY, teach at CUNY. And we'll talk a bunch about, I think, a little bit of bike advocacy, maybe urban planning. So talk about bikes from a different perspective, which I really will enjoy, so we don't have to talk about where to train and about racing or the future of bike racing and all these things that she doesn't have an idea about, which is great, because we'll learn a lot about things that maybe we don't necessarily always talk about, should know more about in the bike racing, road racing community. And again, this project is really about the whole bikes community in New York City, and so I'm looking forward to talking more about urban advocacy, urban planning, people who just ride for fun, commuters, and I think there's a lot of, you're kind of in that Venn diagram of commuter, urban planner, bike advocate. Anything I'm missing there, or what else should we know about Rachel Albetski?
Yeah, well, we said bike. Now I'm a bike blogger. I'm a community advocate, urban planner, former government worker. So I'll tell you about that.
Yeah, please do.
And yeah, urban planner. So
yeah,
try to cover all the bases.
So you have a degree in urban planning then, and that's the professional field you're in. Thank you. Perfect. Thanks. And then, but you're also a cyclist. So how did you get into bike riding? Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. And I already said you're not originally from New York, so you said you're from Connecticut. When I imagine Connecticut, it's kind of here always somewhat derogatorily described as like the bedroom community for New York City, and like you just kind of drive through and complain about the roads and the traffic, and then that's like the New Yorker attitude, right? And I'm not from here, but so I might be misquoting people here, but that seems to sum up. Nobody has a strong love for Connecticut, but how did you feel growing up there, and how did you get into cycling there? I'm assuming you got there, or did you get into cycling here in New York City?
The derogatoriness, I think it's on par. I
want to just say, I've had a really good time many times in Connecticut, so I'm always like, anyway, but you can tell me what your attitude is.
It doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, I don't really identify with being from Connecticut so much anymore. So I grew up, but it's been 12 years since I left Connecticut, and so I kind of, my adult life has all been outside of Connecticut. I went to school in Boston, my undergrad was in Boston, and that was actually where I first got into biking. I think that was like my first time living in a city, so kind of just seeing like, what's the best way to get around? The train is always not super reliable. I just wanted something a little bit faster and more convenient. So I kind of started seeing some people around my campus and stuff biking. Oh, cool! I think I could do that. My first bike was a Schwinn that I got from Target.
I was gonna say used, but not like the old used stuff that we see. It's a Target Schwinn. Which you get at Walmart too, right? Schwinn has been like old American brand, but they have really in the last 20-30 years really been known for being the kind of the big box store bikes, right? That you can get for $100, $150 probably.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, I want a bike. Like literally didn't know anything about bikes, and just was like, all right, great, let's get a Schwinn. It wasn't a great bike, but it got me started.
I think it's a great starter bike, but
so I started biking around Boston a little bit, started getting a little bit more into the scene there, started volunteering with Bikes Not Bombs, which is like a cool organization out of Boston.
Bikes Not Bombs?
Yeah. They mostly they kind of were sending bikes overseas to people, like a donation space, but that was my first.
So it's kind of like World Bicycle Relief or something like that.
And
getting people access to bikes overseas.
Yes, and I wasn't really involved in any advocacy back in Boston, but that was like my first kind of like thing that I did involved in the bike world, bike volunteering world, and I just always was like, everyone in this world is so cool, and I just want to
Yeah.
be like them. Yeah.
Why was that? What was the attraction there? Was it that kind of more the non-profit, like that kind of helping people, that part of it? Was it part of it was the bike community, or was it just the community part itself, or the bike riding was part of that attraction to it, or what was that?
Yeah, I think maybe all of it, but it was more, I think it was just, I think the thing, and like maybe we'll get to this later, is to me the bike world can be kind of intimidating. I think.
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
common theme. I think if you really listen to some of the interviews, yeah.
Yeah, and I even briefly like looking at it, like kind of seeing that. So yeah, definitely it's intimidating, and I think like I was like 20 back then, so kind of seeing it, being like, oh, like.
Had you ridden? Like you had, I'm assuming you had like learned how to ride a bike as a kid, and then kind of been around maybe a neighborhood kind of type of thing, and that was your experience until then.
Never.
Then you moved to Boston, all of a sudden it's traffic, and you were like, maybe a narrow bike lane, and you were in that. And
trying to like get into the world of like what is being an urban bike rider, what's being a bike commuter, like how do I work this thing?
So I'm just gonna check on the angle. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I kind of like didn't know where to go or how to gain access to any of that information, so kind of like started going to the Bike Stop Moms thing, volunteering, and just, I think it was just like the general appearance of everyone there, like so many bikes, they had their cool bikes, they all like rolled up and just seemed like really cool, and I was just like, who are you people? I want to like be more like that. Yeah, so that was kind of my first introduction. That first Schwinn got stolen. I got another cooler Schwinn.
Classic urban story.
Yeah.
Okay. Got another?
got a road bike.
Okay.
And again, it was like sold to me by this kind of really cool dude who refurbished bikes, and I was like, finally, I'm like moving up in the world. I remember biking home with that bike on Commonwealth Avenue, and just like immediately ran into the back of the car because it was like one of those drop handlebars. I have that now, but I just like didn't know how to work it. And I was just like, hit a car on Comm Ave, which is like one of the busiest roads in Boston.
Yeah.
And, like everyone comes out, and we're like, I'm so embarrassed. So it's kind of like, here I am now, much improved.
Fast forward a few years later, and you're here.
Yes, I mean, so I moved in LA, biked in LA. Then,
how was that?
That was
By
crazy.
comparison, I would say like I have actually not done that, but I've been in LA, and it's. I mean, it's certainly parts of it are probably good for biking, or good enough, but for average, like for commuting, probably not the best place.
Yeah, and I also, I mean, like I did an AmeriCorps year in LA, and I was kind of in like South LA.
Yeah.
So my experience is more like biking around South LA. Definitely not like Santa Monica or anywhere where there's bike lanes. And just kind of, I think that kind of does feel like an integral part of my like experience though, because it was like the first time, like especially on a bike, like you can see so much more, like other than taking a train or driving a car. Like I got to know that city like in ways that people that I think have lived there for years just haven't. They're always on the freeway, and also just like really opened my eyes to like the vast like inequality and like the way that street infrastructure is kind of like, why is it so much better over here and not over here? Like, so that was kind of like a really good introduction to urban planning issues, and kind of what propelled me into urban planning a little bit was like just biking around LA and just like being perpetually lost, and also just like perpetually waiting for the bus with my bike.
Yeah, they have the little bike racks in front of the bus.
Just perpetually sitting on the side of the road, just being like, "Where's the bus? It's supposed to be here." Like, so that I think that really that like kind of real world experience just like forever cemented in me. Like really like I want to be able to work on these issues.
Yeah, awesome.
So,
So then LA, and then you moved to New York. Well, I was going to ask you later maybe, but at this point we can already make a comparison, best bike infrastructure. And granted, like, your Boston days are a little further ago, LA, and I'm sure both cities have improved their bike infrastructure, but where do you find bike riding most safe or comfortable or enjoyable, whatever it is?
Yeah, I mean, I think Boston was pretty good. I think Boston has some good, like, more like separated car paths, and which is nice. Like, I used to bike by like the Charles River all the time. It was really nice. But the drivers in Boston
have a reputation.
Really aggressive. And yeah, maybe that's changed. Maybe there's a little bit more respect for bikers now, but there definitely wasn't really like, it was kind of like a do or die scenario back in the day. Like in Boston, it was just like you had to take your space. So I think that also really like hardened me for New York cycling. Like,
I was gonna say, so New York probably haven't had that experience in New York that feel too crazy, man. Because it's not like New York City drivers have the best reputation in terms of like not being aggressive either. Like it's from that angle.
It's true. But like I went from like Boston first time, LA like crazy, and then like coming to New York, I was kind of like, all right, like bikers like at least have like a modicum of respect here.
Yeah, okay.
Like at least there's like a community. Like, Boston, it felt like, you know, kind of like biking. I mean, again, back then, like, felt like a little bit more of like a niche thing. And like LA, it was like no one does that. And so here it was kind of like, oh my gosh, like I see other bikers, like there's people on the road. So at least like different feeling.
You don't feel so lonely by just the amount of sectors, at least in certain parts of the city. I think you feel like you're part of a community just by riding a bike, and they're all riding a bike, and you're
seeing people.
Probably also feeling safer that way because other people are doing it. That means cars have to watch out for it more and have to have more of a sense for it. So
yeah, definitely. I think it's when I got here. I mean, I know that we give New York a hard time. There's always like room for improvement, but there's definitely like a lot of good bike infrastructure here. You know where to look. So yeah. I mean, I think I've been happy with the way that it's going. I think a lot of the issue sometimes is like, it's not that the bike infrastructure doesn't exist, but it's like a little bit less like the cars are parked in the bike infrastructure.
I think that would be on that. There's a lot of like the bike lanes are there, but they're not respected as in like, and again, I get it sometimes, but I think they're frequently just rendered ineffective, and then you have to veer into traffic or wait. I mean, in the terminal amounts to stay in the bike lane, which is just not feasible. I think.
So I think in that way, it's like less like it's more like advocating for the next level of infrastructure, it's like more protected infrastructure and things like that. And I always like try to think about infrastructure like, okay, like what am I comfortable on? Like, but I'm not the typical commuter. Like I feel like I've been biking 12 years. How old am I? So like a while now, right? In a different variety of terrain. Like I feel like I'm pretty comfortable on most roads, but like I think that's kind of hard almost when I like try to think about bike infrastructure, because I think about my own personal experience, but I'm like I'm not really the person that I need to plan for or think about. Like I need to be thinking about the person who feels the most uncomfortable. Like where would they go? What would they do?
I think that's a good point. I think we forget that in the road cycling community too a lot. Like I think a lot of people have a lot of experience and they feel very comfortable. I mean, especially when you're racing also, that you're very comfortable being close to other people, being close to cars. Probably leads you to stupidity sometimes, or to being overly confident. But then I think you think from a mindset like, oh, this is safe, or not, right? But what's safe for you, I think, is not safe for the beginner, right? I think I see that very clearly with people who are true beginners or much closer to being beginning commuters, right? And I think you're right that those are the people you really need to plan for, and that's a challenge.
Yeah, we call that they have that separations, like the 1%, like the 5%, and the 95%.
Okay.
Like you gotta be planning for like the 95%. Most people are the 1% of biker who's like, I'll bike on any road in any condition, right? Like that's 1% of bikers.
I think that's right.
So try to think strategically about that.
I just rode up coming from southern Brooklyn, where I think bike infrastructure is a lot less present, although it's coming slowly. Not always with a lot of, not always, I think as ideally implemented as it could be, but it's kind of the cheap and quick way to do it, so it's better than nothing maybe. But I rode up Kent Avenue here in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, toward Williamsburg, and I think there's a pretty nice one coming up that they're just about to finish, where you have like separated bike lanes, and they're clearly separated from, and granted, it's clearly separated from the road. And I mean, granted, they have the space there, so that probably is one of the reasons why it is there, and if not in other places. But it's possible. I think the city and whoever's behind it is clearly working on it. So
that's also like a testament to advocacy over there,
which we want to talk about too. So it just real quick again, kind of. You're also on you're co-chair of the Transportation Alternatives Board, is what it's called, Community?
North Brooklyn Activist Committee,
North Brooklyn Activist Committee.
Yeah.
Good.
I know,
Okay, I
very,
get the title
very
right.
long.
Yes. Yeah, when I tried to type that out, Transportation Alternatives. Okay, but I know TA, Transportation Alternatives, we'll probably say TA from here on, which is like the common acronym, so we'll go with that. But so you're with TA in a co-chair function there in this North Brooklyn Committee, which I'm assuming is like Fort Greene, Greenpoint, kind of like what's the area that you're?
We call it more like Williamsburg,
yeah.
Greenpoint, and Bushwick.
Bushwick.
And then I just edge myself in there, living in Ridgewood.
Technically, you're on the Queens side, which Bushwick, Queens, on the border.
Yeah, but
yeah.
I feel like Ridgewood kind of just like melds a little bit better into being North Brooklyn. So we plugged it in. So that's what we kind of call the North Brooklyn area.
So I think when we think of that and like Williamsburg and that area being kind of the hipster capital of the world for it, maybe not, and there's probably Portland competing in others, but it has a reputation of a lot of cyclists being there already, right? A lot of cyclists ride on the roads, and I certainly see more people out here on bikes when I ride here than compared to Southern Brooklyn or other places. The bike infrastructure is probably also better compared to other places. So what are the issues, what are the questions, what are the projects that you guys deal with or think about from day to day or meeting to meeting, I guess, or however you function?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the great thing about having kind of like a baseline of relatively good infrastructure to work with is like we get to think a little bit bigger in terms of like what we want to tackle. So I've been personally kind of on and off working on a campaign for Meeker Avenue and UEQE for over 5 years now, and like when we think collectively about like how long the community has been working on this, it's probably more like around 10 years, but that's like kind of like a major re-envisioning of what Meeker Avenue and under BQE could look like in terms of just creating like a community space, not just the bike lane, but like really like re-envisioning the space as a whole. So kind of it's like kind of like having this baseline of like good infrastructure. We get to be like, okay, great, we have the bike lane. Like, let's think bigger than the bike lane. Like, what else do we want? And like under the BQE, it's kind of just been like a huge divider of the community for years and years and years. Like kind of
as many of these big roads in cities are, right? You have like a big road. It's kind of like I think 3rd Ave and Sunset Park, where you have like Sunset Park on one side, and you have Industry City that's kind of developed on the other side. It's like this dividing line. It's like 3-4 lanes on each side, and then it's just like kind of this industrial wasteland thing in the middle.
That was like developed during the Robert Moses era, when we were just like really prioritizing putting cars through cities, and now we're kind of like, let's backtrack on that. But
are we? I'm not sure we are there yet. But I think there's a lot of movement toward doing that.
There are people who are saying, let's backtrack on that. And
I was just in, was it at the, I will talk to Julius Keto works for the Museum of the City of New York, and they had a bike exhibit, kind of the history of New York cycling and all that. And I might be wrong that it wasn't that exhibit. There was an exhibit, probably the same museum, that still used a lot of very positive adjectives around Robert Moses, like brilliant and all that, among other words, right? And I think, and I don't want to engage too much in our business history, but I think the perspective has certainly changed on him as somebody who was very car-focused and centric in his design for not just New York City, but the New York City metro area, right? I mean, I think there's still all the big roads that we see that have kind of cut out Brooklyn, Queens, and other places are his very
like
products of heritage.
The legacy of Robert Moses. I mean, there's a 1,000-page book on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, that has been discussed, so I don't want to like take a deep dive into that, but just as a little bit of context, right? But so back to that there are people like you and the committee that you're working on, and TA, Transportation Alternatives, and and other groups too that do a lot, right, to envision new modes of transportation, alternatives to transportation, in terms of cars really, predominantly, and probably also alternatives to the subway, because the subway system operates separately in its entirety. So I think TA is really concerned with everything that's not subway flying, I guess, and the cars, right? So so Meeker Avenue revision that is kind of re-envisioning that as a major project.
So I think just
that's the flagship project, kind of.
That's when it's kind of like a very like slow moving.
Well, that would be a big project, and there's a lot of funds required, I would imagine, and okays from several political levels probably, and residents and whatnot.
But it's just kind of like, it's good. It's great to have something that kind of can bring the community together in a really comprehensive way, and also like tackle environmental justice issues and air quality issues and things that aren't just about like, oh, let's install a bike lane, like trying to think a little bit more comprehensively about a vision for the community. So I think like being involved with that has been really great. I mean, I think we've been working on like Grand Street, obviously, like improving the bike lane.
Which we're sitting on right now. So
we are. Well, we're sitting on on the other side of BQ8.
So you're thinking the other side.
On the other side.
I was gonna say it's not too bad. The road surface not great, but it's all right. I mean, I've seen worse.
No, we're talking about the other side. Where there is a protected bike lane, and that was due to advocacy to change that from regular like class 1 bike lane to protected bike lane. Still has a lot of issues. Kind of unfortunate. I was hit by a car on Grand Street. I broke my wrist. Can't run. I have.
There's a lot of those.
I have other friends who have been hit on Grand Street or gotten crushed on Grand Street. And this is all after it's been turned.
Does it get a lot busier that way there then? Or because here it feels kind of quiet and not that busy?
That's me.
Which one is that?
I think beans is fine.
Chicken.
Chicken is fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it gets busy over there. You find that was like, I'm sure that was a scary experience. And I think a lot of people go through that. And obviously, I think there's been a lot of conversation about, despite Vision Zero, and again, I think these kind of agendas and blueprints are important, but obviously they're not suddenly meaning that everybody drives safer and or everybody takes more safely, and then all of a sudden there's no traffic deaths, right? Which, in fact, the number has, if anything, gone up, which may partially be to more people on bikes, unfortunately, and not blaming the people who are going on bikes, but also just maybe also more people in cars. So I'm sure you guys know more about that than I do. I'm just curious, kind of looking at that. I'm jumping ahead maybe a little bit. So let's stick with let's stick a little bit more with what you do here. So those are kind of the big projects. Are there like day-to-day kind of smaller projects too that are much more like, okay, we can do this next week, or we can do this next month, or here we have, like, I'm imagining you're doing some outreach and that kind of stuff and connect with the community in a variety of ways that aren't like, okay, here's a multi-million-dollar project that we're working on with a really long-term vision, right?
I mean, I'll be honest, there's nothing we can do next month or tomorrow, but everything is definitely like everything takes time, but I think we're kind of in the process a little bit of re-envisioning how we could work on some of these, like quicker wins, more efficient wins, and what that looks like. So definitely, nothing has been decided yet. We've just kind of, the chairship has just recently shifted, so I've only been in this position for a few months, but definitely like discussing with our members what we want to approach next. And I think it's kind of like exactly that. Like we're like, okay, we have Meeker Avenue, like we've been working on this a long time, it's definitely like a legacy thing. But we want to like also be able to be engaging people in a way that they feel like something they're working on is like getting accomplished.
Right.
So we're trying to think a little bit more strategically about how to engage people around faster wins. But right now we're thinking like things like Metropolitan Avenue, maybe. What else are we thinking? Flushing, parts of Flushing.
Okay. So
But-
you're thinking and contributing to projects that are further away than we're Flushing too. So
Yeah.
I'll let you eat for a minute and I'll just kind of think out loud. So I think TA has, it's interesting, I often, well, when bike advocacy is mentioned, almost always TA is mentioned. And I think somebody in an earlier interview said that, I think that was Aliya Tyus-Barnwell, who was mentioning that we're leaving maybe too much work to TA, and we're always kind of like, oh, anytime it comes to advocacy, we're like, oh, TA's got that, and we don't have to do anything. And I think there's a little bit of that approach, maybe too much responsibility for TA, although I think the organization today is very active and has done a lot of great work. So I think that's, so there's a lot of burnout, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I would imagine. I mean, my understanding is it's in large parts a volunteer-driven organization, right? And I think while there is a lot of enthusiasm for that, and I think we have a lot of young, energetic people in the city who are really into providing alternatives, transportation alternatives. I think that kind of work is intense and burnout. Well, you said you just kind of started it, so you must be, you know about it, you're ready for it?
Restarted.
Restarted, okay.
I was really heavily involved before I went to grad school.
Yeah.
And then I went to grad school and I was kind of like, I need to focus on my grad school.
Yeah.
And then kind of losing the job at DOT, getting back involved with Transalt. So yeah, I've been around the block, but trying to reinvigorate people around activism, especially in a time where you can't come together, you can't do rallies, you can have meetings.
Yeah, it's hard. Well, all the Zoom meetings,
yeah.
Nobody's into yet another Zoom meeting with 20 people or something like that, right? If you can avoid it, I think at this point you're trying to avoid it. And that's got to be taking a hit on advocacy work too. And I think enthusiasm of people for it probably because we connected with whatever happy hour or something that people where you can get together.
Yeah, before people would go to a meeting because it's like, oh, it's something fun to do, and now it's kind of like another chore to log into Zoom again in the evening. So yeah, we're trying to basically rebuild our base and engage people, and with the realization that people they will come, are super engaged, and then they kind of get a little burnt out, especially if there's not if they're not feeling like it's going anywhere,
right?
And that they're making any significant progress with the work that they're working on. I think that's also a testament to the way that things work with DOT. It's very slow moving a lot.
I think I think it's clear about Department of Transportation. Yeah, so it's slow moving, right? It's a classic kind of big government agency. Yeah. It's moving slow. In New York City, I think being so big, and I think everything moves even slower probably at times.
Yeah, and it's kind of now being on the inside of that, I can understand a lot of that at times the slow moving is necessitated by the processes that we have to go through to make sure that something can
it's purposeful often, right? Yeah.
The people on the outside often are just they just want to see it happen as soon as possible, and so when it doesn't, it's kind of what's all my work for,
Yeah, and do you have then a problem with a TA of giving people that, where they get the gratification of having done something, established something, or accomplished something concrete, right? Because that's, I think, one of my questions were indirectly kind of pointing at, you have big, overwhelmingly large almost projects here with Mika. These projects you're talking about are not, there's millions of dollars involved in each of these, even just putting a bike lane is probably at least 6 figures, right? And whatever it is, and it takes time, and you might never see it happen over your time here in New York City because you're already on to your next job or place, or you're moved on something else. And is that, you said that burnout, and that's probably part of that, and it's frustration probably part, or disappointment maybe, whatever it is mixed in there. It's really hard, I would imagine, to really dedicate yourself to that and then stick with it over 5, 10, or your life, even years, right? So
I'll tell
especially
you,
as a volunteer
or
in a volunteer.
Coming back to Meeker and being I started this campaign. This campaign hasn't gone anywhere. What are we doing? And I think I kind of tried a little hard. I was let's just get rid of it. And then, but thankfully, there was someone else who had kind of come on recently, and was very invigorated about working on it. And, they actually got me really excited about working on it. And I was I want to work on this. So I'll tell you, that's straight up from coming from someone who's an urban planner, bike rider, activist, government person. I was
No.
But
Yeah.
you can't have that attitude. Like, unfortunately, like, and I am actually really grateful that the person who was like excited still like got me back on board. So I was like, you know what, you're right. Like, we need to keep working, but you need that continual positive energy. Like, and that's kind of like why I'm doing what I'm doing, is trying to get people excited. The more people that we can have on board, like the better it's only going to be. We can't have the same people just saying the same thing over and over. We just like, we need new voices, we need new ideas, we need new
So the
people.
turnover is a strength too then. Really. I mean, I think when you hear about the person who gets you excited, who's new, I think that makes a lot of sense. I do want to let you eat because looks delicious, and I haven't taken a bite yet. So we're going to come back to a bunch more questions, but we'll take a little break to eat here, and I'm looking forward to the rest.
It's just going to be on the video.
No, we'll take a break.